Thank you, Satine. I would first like to maybe thank Rafi, Futare, and Max for the very enriching and nourishing panel, which really have nourished our souls, to listen to the young academic activists who are struggling in foreign universities for Palestine, especially at this very critical stage of our life, where our children are being assassinated on a daily basis, and our Palestinian Authority, PA, is undermining our third intifada and oppressing the union movement of school teachers. We are really proud of all these struggles. It was very difficult to put a paper on all these different principles, but I couldn't start with gender, which should have been my role as a woman, without really taking into consideration, the political economy framework of universities, which I will start with because also one of the major challenges of Palestinian universities is the commodification of higher education. So, in general, of course, universities are known as sites of learning for critical citizenship, knowledge production, and academic scholarship. Recently, over the past 3 decades, which was mentioned before, but I have to put it in a framework, universities have taken a new model of governance and restructuring to accommodate the neoliberal market economy and to meet the needs of globalization, overlooking the need for further enhancing social justice and gender equality. Restructuring has touched the university's nature and scope of its mission, governance style, the nature and value of knowledge it produces, and its relation to the wider economy and society. This shift towards a global knowledge economy caused public universities to experience cuts in public funding, changing demographics of student bodies, advances in communication and technology as focus areas on account of social sciences, demands for increased accountability, efficiency, and cost effectiveness, while at the same time ignoring the negative impact of such policies on scope and boundaries of intellectual space, thus resulting in constraining freedom of expression, limiting the development of critical thinking, leaving the students and employees to bear the financial and moral consequences of on their own, disrupting the process of producing public intellectuals. Here, citizens lose their public voice as market liberties replace civic freedoms, and society increasingly depends on consumers to do the work of citizens. In the context of occupied Palestine, we are witnessing and experiencing some of the same global indicators and changes in local universities similar to other countries. What is really worrying is how these changes can become destructive in a situation like Palestine, where universities don't only play an academic role or a developmental one, but are tools for decolonization, resistance, and steadfastness against the Israeli settler colonial occupation, which enforces, of course, as you know, dispossession, exploitation, elimination of national and cultural identity. Indicators of commercialization of higher education in Palestinian universities are being witnessed in different universities in various degrees, and responding to the discourse and neoliberal plans of the PA post-Oslo. To put this in a more concrete context, the World Bank has introduced structural adjustment policies as an entry point for transforming the Palestinian economy to a neoliberal market economy, imposing a post-conflict agenda. The most recent educational development strategic plan, covering the years 2014 until 2019, entitled Palestine 2020, A Learning Nation, articulates several broad objectives for Palestinian higher education and clearly indicate the confused identities. It starts with this, I quote, "Education is to prepare human beings who are proud of their religious values, nationality, country, and their Arab Islamic culture, who contributes to the development of the society, who actively seek knowledge and creativity, who interact positively with the requirements of scientific and technological development, who are capable of competing in science and technological development, and in applied fields, who are open to other cultures and regional and international markets, and a society based on equality between genders, build up higher education systems which is accessible, multiple, decentralized, diversified, flexible, effective." All these concepts were there. Efficient, sustainable, competitive, and qualitative. That's the end of the quotation. A discourse that really lacks internal harmony, as it combines ethnocentric feelings in terms of national and religious identity, bearing traditional positions used for local consumption and political reasoning to neutralize traditional forces, while at the same time fill in selective modern principles reflecting neoliberal qualities addressed to the West and the donor community. Whether an educational system can produce the right organic intellectual in such a paradoxical binary is questionable. Furthermore, such a discourse within a colonial context can transform educational institutions to depoliticized, irrelevant, and alienating tools to the social and political reality. Looking at some examples of the restructuring paradigm in Palestine, I will be highlighting just very small examples with large consequences. One of the World Bank recommendations of higher education is the need to decrease expenditures by saving from educational budgets, to deal with the government cutbacks by both increasing tuitions, number of students per class, and enhancing teaching productivity. Where is number 4? Sorry. Productivity, in my definition, is exploitation. The bank argues that since they have measured no substantive increase in academic performance when class sizes are reduced, hence maintaining large numbers is costly, irrational, and unnecessary. Most higher education institutions have taken this model in most undergraduate courses to ensure cost effectiveness and efficiency, neglecting by this the value of content, quality, potential for developing discussion space and critical thinking, where students can engage on critical issues and have spaces for freedom of expressions. Another example is research. Most of the research is first quantified, donor-driven. Research is oriented only to policy formulation and not for academic and critical production. However, there are pockets in the university where academic production and alternative production is happening. And a colleague here, who said about, or who used the concept counter-hegemony, I think some of these pockets are revisiting all these concepts to produce them in a context that is more relevant. Although, of course, we're not talking about universalism here, because fundamentalist and religious movements can use this entry point to really attack the women's studies in general. Another example of very important value, maybe to me in particular, was the social sciences in general and cultural studies programs in particular. In the different universities, there is a devaluation of cultural studies. And in particular, its value of theorizing the regulatory and emancipatory relationship among culture, power, and politics. A call for minimizing CS was done in Birzeit also, 2 courses in CS, one only in other universities. In some universities it was called Islamic culture, and another world civilization. And however, I want here to say that in the early 70s, when I was a student at Birzeit University, cultural studies courses, the 4 of them, were required by all university students. And I remember the positive effect of these courses on our personalities, intellectual capacity, and political consciousness, as classrooms have been platforms for debates on important issues that touched our lives, realities, and taught us how to express our thoughts, create alternative analysis and solutions to our problems, and expand these debates. Issues addressed in these classes were material for public debates and continuous discussions in the cafeterias surrounding the old campus, where students and teachers sit together to reflect. And I think this is where the Palestinian revolutionary elite of Birzeit learned hard politics, critique, and discourse of rights and freedoms. However, in the last few years, we have witnessed the gradual collapse of this program, which, in our view, is one of the conspiracies, maybe, of the neoliberal paradigms. The justification emphasized the financial and undermined the real causes, which the controversial nature of this program and its potential in creating critical intellectuals through initiating debates within the classroom that can become a reason for political conflict, which happened also in Birzeit University, with a professor and a group of students supported by few faculty, as a result of posted caricatures on the professor's door, which were misinterpreted and threatened the freedom of expression because the professor had to leave. Another tool for commodification of higher education was the policy of increasing tuition, which expressed power on one hand, exerted by the administration and directed by the neoliberal paradigm, and injustice to the student movement and student body, which for the different stages of our revolution have been the structures for resistance. We usually celebrate the beginning of the academic year with either short or long strikes and sit-ins for tuition raise. One of the long strikes that I have witnessed closely is the long strike of Birzeit University in 2011, when the student movement closed the university for 1 month. And I happened to be the president of the Union of Faculty and Employees. During this strike, I recall also my experience at AUB in 1974, in our long strike, which closed the university also for 34 days, and resulted in the expulsion of 103 students. I wished Mubarak was here to just tell him what happened. I realized then and now the organic link between privatization and oppression, and the responsibility of the student movement in understanding these issues without compartmentalizing them, which is a realistic and organic link. And also, these issues have promoted the different slogans, like the right to education for all, which was a uniting slogan for all different political parties and different political views. Okay, because we don't have too much time, I want to jump to the academia and women. And Huda, I think introduced the issue. Of course, in regard to gender equality in the university, there are attempts made now to address inequality, female representation across disciplines and in the hierarchy. Of course, gender inequalities are currently prevailed, I mean, wherever, in all the globe, and in all universities, but in different degrees. But what we have realized, that a critical mass of women leaders committed to gender equality and transformative leadership and supported by women and men at all levels in the institution is needed to effect such changes. And in this context, I would say that the Institute of Women's Studies, which now celebrated the 22nd year, have conducted a gender audit in the university in 2015. And now we have the findings. And the gender audit, combined with different other also methodologies, social science methodologies, qualitative and quantitative, has drawn a gender map to locate where females are in the university. At the same time, we have done a gender review of the legal framework to see where the gaps are, and at the same time define the existing policies and strategies and their impact on the female participation and representation. The audit's objective was mainly to promote gender-specific policies that can enhance women's positions within the institution through defining appropriate and relevant gender tools and affirmative actions. Now, reasons for the gender bias, and I might just highlight some of the findings, were absence. Okay. So absence, of course, of gender-specific policies, but there was an informal patriarchal network was one of the problems that really have expanded the gender gap. At the same time, the neutrality of regulations, and this is very important. Neutrality of the regulations is discriminatory because it doesn't take into account the gender division of labor and women's responsibilities in the care economy. And that is very important. So in that context, we have only last week established the Gender Monitor. Now it's a body, autonomous body that reports to the president, where gender-specific tools will be promoted and gender tools will be offered for. And by the way, the gender audit was conducted on all sectors of the university, not just the faculty, but also employees and students. And now the action plan is to try to remedy this gender gap with different policies. And there is an executive committee now that has been appointed by the president who will be doing this. As a conclusion, just one word. You may ask me, why are you doing this in Palestine, in a national liberation struggle? You know, it's not a priority. And I may say that to ensure a democratic state in 100 years from now, I don't know when, I mean, it's very important to start the process and be able to institutionalize the ethos of women within the institution, to be able to mainstream this model on other universities and in the region and in the local context. I'm sorry for the delay. Thank you very much.